Hi, and welcome to today's episode of Women's Health Unwrapped. Thank you for joining and taking time to check out this episode. I know it's going to be another good one. We're talking about food and diet culture today. And if you've followed me for a while on social media, or maybe a regular podcast listener, you know that I'm very opinionated about this topic. I do what I do because I know the value of health as women, yet sadly, I also know that so many women associate good health with the number on the scales and what they eat and restricting the food that they eat. And I think we've been conditioned, many of us from a young age, to believe that being a certain size and shape is the unlock to confidence and happiness. And so we pursue that goal throughout our lives, which of course comes with a cost. And that cost is unhappiness and often poor health. So we aren't gaining what we want. We're actually getting the opposite, thinking we're going to lose weight and get the positive, confident, happier version of us. And in fact, we often end up feeling pretty unhappy and certainly not more confident. So Kristy is joining me from Clean Eating with Kristy, and we're going to explore this topic together to help you realise the importance of having a positive relationship with food, but also modelling good eating habits, and how to be confident in the kitchen, because that's often a barrier many of us have in having a better relationship with food, but also eating healthier food. So we'll unwrap some of Kristy's story, how she overcame her fear of food and cooking to build those strong, healthy habits, and to get to where she is now, describing it as having a very friendly relationship with food, which I really like. So welcome to the podcast, Kristy.
Thank you so much for having me. I am thrilled to be here and to talk all things food.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to get us started, I love to find out what our guests' most impactful healthy habit is. So what would you say yours is in your toolkit right now?
Oh, that without a shadow of a doubt is meal planning. 100%.
And do you plan for the week ahead? And do you plan every meal for each day?
Yeah, so I used to plan when I first started, it was very helpful for me to plan every single meal because I
Mhm.
felt like that gave me a sense of control and I knew what was coming. Um, Instead of having my emotions take over what I was eating, I actually then knew exactly what I had. So now, 20 years later, what that has evolved into is I have a general idea of what I am making and what I'm planning. Typically, I do plan my dinners because those are by the end of the day, just like you and, your listeners, that's when I'm tired. That's when I don't have the bandwidth to think of anything else. So I will definitely plan my dinners and make sure that I have everything in house for that. My breakfasts and my lunches, they kind of flow with my schedule, but I'm also very familiar now with what I can do quickly, what I
Mm.
have on hand. But dinners are like a hard plan in my home, at least 3 dinners for the week to get me through what we need to.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I'm sure we'll get into more of those tips when we start talking about how to be confident in the kitchen and
Mhm.
have that friendly relationship with food. But yeah, meal planning is definitely one of my favourite and most impactful habits as well. And you touched on something which is interesting in that as you continue and embed this into your life, it becomes very normal to
Mhm.
eat that way. And so what often starts out as feeling quite difficult and hard work, and that you've got to put effort in to make it happen, and perhaps a bit of time to work out what to eat and to do the plan and so on, that is going to get easier over time because you become a person who meal plans, and you also become a person who eats that type of food. And that's where it gets really easy, and you get those great ripple effects of putting those habits into your life. So I'd love to know what that unfriendly relationship with food used to be like.
So I will say that I'm a recovering emotional eater because every day our emotions are just kind of all over the place. And that was for me how I found comfort actually was in food. And growing up, food was um, always present in our home. It was something we ate when we were happy, when we were sad, when, there was a good thing that happened, there was a bad thing that happened, because, and now looking back on it, I see when you're eating, you normally are happy, but you also can't talk about things when your mouth is full, right? So that was our family's way of just kind of like controlling everything. And so we'll eat, like everything will be fine. We'll
Mm.
eat. And unfortunately, I took that pattern with me into my young adulthood when I first became married. And that was my coping mechanism. Then when my relationship just was not going how I wanted it to go, but I found all the love that I needed in food. So that's where I turned, and that's where the weight came on. That's where I began really unhealthy habits then, of just like filling myself with food all the time because that's when I felt good, and trying to numb all of the after effects of eating what I shouldn't eat.
Yeah. And so what impact did eating in that way and responding to your emotions like you were have on your overall health and how happy you are in life?
Yeah, so it's funny. I didn't see myself as unhappy until I would look in a mirror. And then I would see actually what other people were seeing, and actually reflecting in the mirror was like, this is not a happy, this is not a happy woman. This is not a happy person who's enjoying life. And so I felt I was not happy. I did not feel good. And what ended up happening was I also had my first daughter I had when I was 24. I wasn't able to do things with her. Getting down on the floor to play with her was like exercise for me because it took so long to get down on the floor and to get back up again. I couldn't run with her. I couldn't play with her. And as a young mom, that's when the things started to, really um, take place with like, wait a minute, is this what we're doing? And we're also showing her that this is how we also react when our emotions come up. And so that was really the piece of like, not necessarily that I wanted to be uh, an athlete or necessarily a picture of activity. I just wanted to be able to move with her and be able to play with
Mm.
her and not feel tired all the time. So that was really my driving factor there.
Mm. So you were quite young when that happened then
Hmm.
because you'd had your daughter at that age. And were you overweight at that point, Kristy?
I was
Yeah.
about 60 pounds overweight. Hmm.
Mm. And you talk about diet culture, so what did
Hmm.
dieting and trying to lose that weight look like for you then?
So, I mean, it looked like everything. So that was 20 years ago.
Mm.
And actually a little bit more than that, about 25, because she's 25 now. But back then we didn't have access to the internet, to
Yeah.
Google, to all of the things that we had now. So it was more Weight Watchers. It was the South Beach diet, anything that was a fad diet back then, and counting points, right? The calories and all of those things. So I really tried anything that would give me that promise of you're going to lose 10 pounds in 4 weeks. And I'm like, oh, great, perfect. That's going to work. But then what happens after that 4 weeks is over, right? It's not a lesson in, and this is then how you maintain it. This is how you sustain it. So it was a constant struggle and a roller coaster for me because I would lose the weight and then I'd gain it back again. And then I'd try something else. And then I'd try the next thing. I did not have anything that I could hold on to. And I kept viewing myself as failing because every program wasn't quote unquote working for me because
Mm.
I couldn't hold on to the weight that was lost.
Mm. Yeah, very familiar story. I can completely associate with that as well. Um, and Like, how was your relationship with food then at that point? Were you still eating emotionally? Had you started to work on that part of it?
I think it was more at that time, I was feeling very restricted and very like I if you ask me today, I will tell you that I think about food all the time. But it's in a different way. But back then it was I was thinking about what I couldn't have all the time because that wasn't considered healthy for me. And so it
Mm,
became almost obsessive. And I don't think I ever binged, but there were times when I would definitely, eat an entire bag of sour cream and onion chips and lick my finger and scrape the crumbs on the bottom of it because I knew that once that bag was over, I wasn't going to be able to have it again. So it was a constant play in my head of like, okay, well, we're going to have this now, and then tomorrow we'll have a salad for lunch because that will erase it, right? That will make everything better.
mm.
Um, and so it was like a love hate relationship that I had with food. I really wanted to make good choices, but at the same time, I was like, this food is boring and I don't enjoy it. And there's nothing about it that I love.
Yeah, oh, we're just brainwashed so much, aren't we, in that
My goodness, yeah.
sense? Yeah, of like, what are you allowed to have? What are you not allowed to have?
Mm-hmm.
And when you have the not allowed to eat stuff, how much of it can you have in one go? And
Mm-hmm.
I, I bet you did the same. I know lots of people did the same in my friendship or work group, was you'd be planning to start a new diet always on a Monday. So
Always
then
on a
that
Monday.
weekend you would eat so much
Yep.
because you were like, I'm going to go on a diet, so I'm going to eat as much as I can
Yeah.
because then I won't be allowed to eat it again. And God, it's just so harmful, isn't it, to our
Mm-hmm.
overall mental health? But as we know now, our mind and body is so connected. So all of that stuff we're saying to ourselves is actually really damaging to how we feel as well. And so what was the turning point for you then to move away from diet culture and build this friendly relationship you now have with food?
Yeah, so what I realized was, I love food. That's my job now. I work with food all the time. And so I knew that, and especially in our family too, food is such a main focus. It's nothing that I could really separate myself from. So what
Yeah.
I really wanted to do was take my favorite foods that I loved when we would eat out or when I would take out and learn how to make those at home. And gradually, what I started to do was, and I was also on like a really tight budget because I was a single mom at that time
Yeah.
too. So I had to learn how to be very smart with the food that I was eating and with the substitutions. And I played a lot with flavors. I played a lot with food because I also wanted it to make, you know, it feel like a special experience when I was sitting down to eat the food. Like that's still to
Yeah.
this day really important to me that every meal is a special experience. But instead of me living to eat, right? I then was eating to live because I had a new focus. I had a new focus for myself and for my daughter. And so I really started playing around with flavors and I started playing around with, all right, well, what happens if I don't use the bun for the burger? I still make the burger. And maybe I don't know, like, put a lot of broccoli with it. How can I season the broccoli with it so that I'm still getting the same flavors and the tastes? And that led me down like a really fun road of experiencing new foods and being open. I think that was the other key for me was that I had to no longer feel like I was closed or restricted, but I had to be open to new things that I could, instead of saying, well, I can't have this,
Hmm.
saying to myself, well, what can I bring back into my life? What can I bring into my life? So I didn't feel like there was a void.
Yeah. And were you someone who like was confident cooking food before you reached this point where you took a different approach? No.
No, no,
No.
believe it or not. I didn't grow up really cooking in the kitchen a lot.
Mm.
My mom was a nurse. She worked night shifts a lot, and what she did was she made casseroles a lot, so she could do that real quick in the morning before she slept for the day while we were at school. So like dinners were normally like a one pot meal, um, a casserole that she could do, and then we would have like fish sticks and French fries a couple nights. But she wasn't really a cook. She didn't like to try new things. She would get frustrated. And so I didn't have that experience in front of me. And my dad is actually the one who did most of the cooking in the home, but he would cook for, like, there was four of us in the home, but he would cook for 20 people all the time. Like, it was all like so much food all the time. And so I just didn't have that experience. And it was really starting from scratch with,
Mm.
okay, how am I going to do this?
And what
Learning.
do you think, yeah, gave you like that motivation
Hmm.
when you weren't
Hmm.
someone who naturally had it? Was, how old was your daughter at this point when you started to play around with food and shift that
She
relationship?
was, she was about 5.
Yeah, so you spent quite a
Yeah.
few years dieting, trying to restrict and
Hmm.
so on. And what was it that then pushed you to go into this unknown territory?
To me, it seemed exciting. And it just, once I started reading, I really read a lot back then, again, because we didn't, I say back then, like I'm so old, but like the internet just it wasn't as
Yeah.
prevalent as it is now. So I spent a lot of time reading cookbooks and trying to get new recipes from that. And that's when I was like, oh my goodness, there is like a whole new side of healthy, and also too ingredients that I would have never even, like quinoa, which is
Mm.
something, so we hear a lot now. It was a relatively new food back then, and I had no idea how to make it. I could make rice, but I couldn't make quinoa. So I wanted to, it was almost like a game to me, I guess. I wanted to see what I could make, and I usually chose one new ingredient a week because my budget was so tight. I usually chose one new ingredient a week to try. And that was where I would, play around with the recipes and the different flavors, and then it became fun. And I got to learn how to do it because, like you said, the more you practice something, the easier it becomes. And my taste buds were changing as the food was changing. That was a really big thing for me. Um, my taste buds were changing, and so I was ready to try those new foods, and I was excited, and I was like, oh, what can I make? That eggplant this week, let's make something with the eggplant. Never ever did I eat eggplant growing up, but now it's something that I look forward to because there's so many things you can do with it.
Yeah, and that's aubergine here in the UK, if anyone wondering
Exactly.
what
Oh,
an
that's right.
eggplant is.
Yes, yes.
I know why we have so many different names for vegetables
I
and
know.
fruits. It's strange, isn't it? Yeah, and other things actually, not just foods.
Yeah.
Um, but something you said there, which I think is not just applicable to food, but everything when we talk about building healthy habits, is that as you start to do it, you change in terms of how you feel, and so you want more
Mm.
of that, and that's the great ripple effects I'll talk about. But definitely with food, it has been proven, hasn't it, that you can change your taste buds. You can rewire your brain to like different foods. It's a bit like when you wean a baby and they say, to keep repeating giving them something that they refuse, and often it can take 15 times for them to
Hmm.
realize they like something and they're going to accept it, where if you give up after 2 times, then you've missed an opportunity to teach them that taste at a young age. And so it's great to hear you saying that your taste buds shifted, because obviously you had been having quite an unnutritious diet. You were dieting and doing a lot of the fad stuff and using food to fulfill the emotions. So how did you start to manage that shift towards what your emotions needed when they were coming into play?
I think that was I'm going to say like definitely a couple years after, right? Because
Yeah.
just like with anything we change, we can't do it all at once. I think that was one of the reasons why it was so overwhelming for me, because I was trying to change everything at once, and I I just couldn't do that. So once I began to change my food and I began to feel different, that was the key, was my body was looking different. I had more energy. I was feeling different. I was feeling better about myself. That's when then I started to notice, like, oh, wait a minute. When this comes up or when I feel this way, then typically this is the food that I will reach for. And especially being around my family too, because I was the one who was making those changes. Nobody else in my family wanted to do this with me, even though I had asked them. And so it became then, first of all, I couldn't keep those foods in the house because I knew it was going to be a trigger for me. It had nothing to do with restriction, but it was like, if I want to get past this, I can't do
Mm.
this. So I didn't keep those foods in the house. And then I began to ask myself, okay, when I'm feeling this way, do I need to eat? And if the question is no, which 99% of the time it was no, then what can I do instead? I always like gave myself that question, what can I do instead? And it usually, again, 99% of the time, was removing myself from the kitchen or removing myself from that food situation, going for a walk, taking my daughter for a bike ride, going outside, getting some fresh air. And once I removed myself from that situation and the food involved with it, then I was able to be like, oh, and then I could do this instead of eating. And this also makes me feel good. And this is a time I get to spend with my daughter instead of just sitting down eating a bag of chips. So there were so many other, I want to say, mindset shifts along the way that, again, the more I did it, the more it became natural for me and the more it just became almost like habitual, right? Because it was like, oh, I'm feeling this. I'm not going to go eat. Let me go for a walk, and kind of like that book by James Clear, The Atomic Habits, right? It's like it's habit stacking, essentially,
Yeah.
what it was. So that's, kind of how that moved into place. And I still use that question even with the women that I work with now. Do you need to eat? And if you don't need to eat, then what else can you do instead? Is there something else that you can do that's going to make you feel good instead?
Mm. It's about being really mindful, isn't it, of what you are feeling
Hmm.
and what action you're about to take. And then having that
Yeah.
self-awareness to go, oh, I'm about to pick up a bar of chocolate or a bag of sweets. Why am I going
Yeah.
to eat that? And as you say, do I really need to eat that? And what else could I do? And I sometimes still do that now. I did some
Oh, yeah, me too.
yeah, because I did some coaching. I think it might have been maybe last year or the year before with someone I knew who was training to do her coaching certification. And I said, yeah, I'll volunteer and, we all can gain from a
Yeah.
bit of coaching. And I said, actually, I'd really like to talk about sugar and treats on a weekend and why I
Hmm.
still, even with everything I know, and I don't like to use those terms of treats and good and bad and off days and
Hmm.
cheat days and so on. But, why is it that on a weekend I feel as though that's the only
Mm.
time I can allow myself to have something sweet like that? And we dug into that. And so I started to question that. It's like, yeah, why do I do that today? Why do I need that today? And I think when we have all got these beliefs and stories embedded into our
Mm.
subconscious mind, which every one of us as humans does. And we've got the ones that, like many women have around dieting and the way we look and what food means. Like they're so deeply ingrained in who we are, it can be really tough to shift. So I'd love to know a little bit about what you do in clean eating and
Yeah.
yeah, just to share some tips maybe on how when someone isn't a natural cook or maybe feels that they're gifted with just, picking up a
Mhm.
few items and creating a meal. How can someone do that? But yeah, tell me a bit about the clean eating concept.
Yeah, so for me, and what I like to do with the um, the business side of it is, so clean eating is essentially whole food. It doesn't have to mean organic. It doesn't have to mean anything specific, but I love for the women that I work with to think of it as whole food, right? So an
Hmm.
apple is an apple, an avocado is an avocado. There's like, that's as close to the actual source as you can get. And for so many of us, we are like, but I can't just have an apple for a snack. That's not a snack. I have to have, an apple with peanut butter, like just you like create all of these extra things in your head. And so one of the things that I do specifically in the very beginning is you look at your schedule and you start with like, what is the hardest meal for you? Breakfast, lunch, or dinner? And that's where we're going to start then, because that's where the gap is, right? That's where we're missing. And then we're going to do one or two things, no more, that make it easy for you. So if that means cutting up some fruit and vegetables that you can have ready to go in your fridge, because in those moments when you say, I don't have anything to eat, and you go to the pantry and grab your bag of chips or pretzels, that's your brain telling you those are easy. I can eat that. When in
Hmm.
reality, we have the same thing in our fridge. I keep baby carrots in the fridge. Here in the US, we can buy the little bags of baby carrots. That's the same thing, right? I can grab baby carrots and a thing of hummus if I need that when I go out the door. And that actually, when I go to pick up my youngest now, that's my car line snack, is a baby carrots, the bag of baby carrots. And I'll just munch on those and crunch on those and, eat those. Um, Peppers, right? Slice some peppers up if you really like the red and yellow and orange peppers, because those peppers, if you think about it, they can go in your omelets, they can be eaten as a snack, they can be roasted for dinner. They can go in a multitude of different things. And it's just that one food, right? That can really just add in some vegetables, add in some fruit. If you're not used to fruit, then oranges and apples are really great, and bananas, because those are single. You can actually grab one and go.
Yeah.
And those are the things that we overcomplicate. So when we bring it back to the basics and we say fruits and vegetables, and you look in your kitchen and your fridge and you don't have any, well, let's start there then, because that's where we can grow from. We can go from there.
Yeah, and it is all about those small gradual steps, which is another problem
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
naturally as humans we want that reward straight away, and I think how we are conditioned, certainly in westernized countries and around
Mm-hmm.
food, we just want the result instantly. It's like, well, I've decided I'm going to eat healthy, maybe to lose weight, or maybe as part of a fitness campaign, or just overall improving your health, especially in
Mm-hmm.
midlife women, to perhaps balance hormones better. And you want to feel all the things immediately, after a week. And so, yeah, but
Yeah.
we have to take it step by step. Otherwise, if, like you said, if we try and do it all at once, it's just impossible. Like, we can't change from being person A to person B in how we
Yeah.
live and feel in the space of a week.
Well, and the other thing that we forget, I forget this too, so I constantly have to remind myself, but we didn't get where we are today because of a decision that we made yesterday, right?
Yeah.
We got where we are today because of something that we have been doing for years. For me, it was a way that I was grown up. Like, I was brought up. That's how I was raised. And so 18 years of that, there's no way that I can just, 360 it and then,
Mm.
be done in 1 week. So we forget that.
Hmm.
And that is something that we have to remember. That's why this is such a daily process, I believe. Even now, even though I know
Yeah.
the right thing to do, I still have to revisit this every day. I still have to revisit the food that I'm buying for my family and ask
Mm.
myself, is this what I want them to eat? Or is there another choice that I can make?
Mm.
When we ask ourselves those deeper questions instead of just the surface level or even just numbing it, then we actually will get to the answers that we want. But those answers can be scary sometimes too, right? Like,
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
want to
Because
know, so
yeah, there's often so much interweaved with why we are the
yeah.
way we are. And sometimes that can be
Hmm.
quite painful for people to revisit,
Yeah.
which is why working through it with a coach can be really beneficial.
Hmm.
And I think what we need to remember as well is that even when we build new habits, those old habits, those pathways in our brain don't go
Hmm.
away. They're still there. We just replace them the way the brain works. We replace them with the new things. So as you say, we are always that person we were with those habits, but we've become
Hmm.
someone, changed our identity to be someone who eats healthier. But that program we had originally is still there, and something might trigger that to come up again. So it's being really aware, but that's why as well it's so important to do that mindset work and digging
Hmm.
and self-awareness and reflection and so on, to build those new habits in the right way, rather than, as you said, just try and kind of stick a plaster over it and go, well, yeah, I'm just going to try and not eat sweets and force myself to, and hopefully it'll stick, because yeah, it probably won't, or it's going to take a
Yeah.
very, very, very long time to feel natural and comfortable. And that's where we're
Hmm.
trying to get to. Because I mentioned at the start that one of your big missions in doing what you're doing is to help women to role model to their children
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
grandchildren, if they have them, what healthy eating looks like, and what that friendly, shall we say, just easy relationship with food is. And so why
Hmm.
is that so important to you, and how did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, that's huge for me because I feel like I lived that with my oldest. So both of my daughters, my oldest is 25 and she has a baby, so I am a grandma.
Oh.
I'm a Gigi. And but then my youngest, she just turned 11. So I lived through that with my first daughter. I lived through feeding her chicken nuggets and french fries and feeding her the same way that I ate. And I also lived through when my youngest was born saying, I'm going to not do this time, and I'm going to start at the beginning, because
Mm-hmm.
already at that point I was well into this journey, and seeing the difference between them now is amazing. And the foods that my younger one will eat, and she has been beside me in the kitchen. That is another really big thing that I do in all of my programs, is bring your children in the kitchen with you so they can
Yeah.
experience the cooking, they can touch, they can feel, they can taste the foods. She's been beside me ever since she could stand on the stool and reach the counter. So like since she was 2, but the her taste buds, her just plethora of foods that she eats, it's so different, and she has an open mind about that. And I also look to just what she's doing. And when we want different things for our children, we have to show them different things. We cannot just speak about it. We have to actively show them. And I'm
Mm.
so excited because with the baby, with my grandson, I get to make food for him. I'm making some of his baby food, and I take that up, and it's so exciting to introduce him to those foods at such a young age, because I know that what that can do for him. And just being able to see the difference, it's once you see that difference, that's the transformation, is once you see that, and once you see what food can do for us as
Mm.
individuals and as a family, and as your children grow, it really is very exciting. And it's amazing because it opens our eyes and possibilities to things that we would have never thought of.
Absolutely, I love that. And food is such a big part of our lives. It's always
Hmm.
going to be, culturally. And yeah, as you said, you love food. I love food. I love really good
Hmm.
quality, tasty, delicious, just nice food. And so I'm
Yeah.
like you, in that I really enjoy making things that are satisfying, but that I know at the
Mhm.
same time are ticking lots of boxes in terms of, feeding my gut microbiome, giving me variety of different types of foods. Um,
Mhm.
and certainly when it comes to children, my vision in my business is to normalize healthy habits so our kids grow up
Mm.
just knowing that living healthy is what equals living happy. And when I've
Yeah.
shared that, with different people in different settings, they'll say, "Oh, so do you go into schools and you work with kids?" And I say, "No, I work with women." "All right, so why is that your vision?" And I was actually having a chat with someone a couple of weeks ago, doing a bit of coaching on my business. And she said, "Oh, I really think your messaging is the problem. Like, that vision's not what your business is about." And I said, "No, vision is why does your business exist? Like, what are you ultimately trying to achieve that
Mm.
you can't achieve on your own as a business, but you want to contribute to shifting and changing?" And I said, "I do that through my mission, which is helping women to build sustainable, healthy habits so that they feel well and strong. And their kids will learn that. That's how the vision's
Mm.
achieved by us." And I do really believe that as women, we have that power. Is that what you think as well?
Oh, 100%. And
Mm.
it is something that I live. I live that vision every day. I
Oh,
live my mission because it is really important. And, just for that point, my daughter actually, we just switched schools, but she was in school. She was like, "Mommy, can you save," meaning the healthy snacks, the fruits and vegetables, "can you save those for home? Those are home snacks," because my friends at school, they didn't understand why she was eating all of those healthy snacks.
wow.
And because that's not around, that's not what they see. And
Mm.
so something like that breaks my heart, but here it's normal that
Hmm.
that's what we have. Right.
Yeah.
So there's so many things that are untapped with that, with kids, and just like having them learn to love food and experience it in a way that is positive and has nothing to do with the scale or calories or points, but just like you said, like joy
Yeah.
and what it can do for our bodies, because it really does make a big difference.
Mm. And we're just not taught that because of our own upbringing, or most of us, I think,
Hmm.
in the generation we were part of, but we're not taught it through education. And then as we become a mother, nobody really gives you a handbook and says, "By the way, everything you do is what's going to be caught by your child and what they do." And I love that term. I don't know if you follow Ed Milet. He speaks about,
Hmm.
um what children like do and learn and so on is caught, not taught. So it's caught as in it's what they see
Yeah.
and just experience in their life, rather than telling them and teaching them as such. And that's so true, but nobody tells us that when we're pregnant and says, "By
No.
the way, what you say,
Right.
what you do, how you react, what you eat, that's all, you're basically creating a clone of yourself." And I was really fortunate that I did some coaching while I was pregnant with a
Mm.
psychologist through work as like my business development. And that was so fascinating because it was the first time I'd ever heard about limiting beliefs and how we are
Mm.
programmed ourselves and why we're the way we are. And so it really made me mindful of some of how I was as a mother. But, I'm far from perfect. But like you, my daughter's grown up around seeing me cook. She's been involved in meal
Hmm.
preparation. She's 16. She's a fantastic baker. She has celiac disease. And this is
Mm.
something I'm really kind of vocal about as well, because many of us are obsessing about food constantly and thinking about what we eat and what we can't eat and restricting ourselves. But then you have people like my daughter with an autoimmune disease that she has to think about food every single day for the rest of her life
Mm.
to live healthy. And, that's been enforced on her, but
Hmm.
the rest of us don't have to be that way. And I see what it's like for her to have to consider every single meal. It's much easier, obviously, in the home, but when you're
Yeah.
out or you're on holiday, she's just started college, she has to navigate that,
Hmm.
or she's going to be poorly and potentially impact her long-term health. And so I think the more we can, like you say, normalize it and have that
Mhm.
friendly relationship and the way we interact and get joy from it, the better, because we've got enough to worry about, frankly, in life, haven't we?
We do, and the thing, we have to eat every day. Our bodies,
Mm,
it's not like a choice, right? So we have to. So if we can make it something that is simple, if we can make it something that makes us feel good, then it's going to be a lot easier than having to constantly fight that every day, day in and day out, and
mhm.
go back and forth with those feelings. So it's easier to flow rather than these crazy roller coasters,
Yeah.
that we're used to. So that is, I love that story too, because it's a goal that you educate our children. That's our job. And we want them to have skills when they leave our home. And if they haven't even just made simple meals in the kitchen, how can we expect them to even make healthy choices outside of that, let alone cook a meal? Right. So there are certain things that really, just for our children's sake, we need to do that, because otherwise they're going to go through the same thing that we did. And that was painful enough for us. So we don't want that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to wrap us up, I would love for you to share 3 simple tips that someone can use to start building a habit of being more confident in the kitchen and bringing that more, flow, as you describe it, into theirs and their family's relationship with food.
Yeah. So the first thing is, I'm going to say, give yourself grace, because we all, have our moments. So just because you fail at one meal does not mean you have failed forever. So you're going to give yourself grace. That's the first thing. The second thing is to set aside 10 to 15 minutes every day, to take a look at your calendar for the week. I'm sorry, 10 to 15 minutes at the beginning of the week. I usually do this
Right.
on Sunday, but look at your calendar for the week. We know what's on our calendar. We put appointments on our calendar, and give yourself, like, look at it so you can see what's coming up. So you see what days or what evenings are going to be the hardest for you, or you're going to be more pressed for time. And that is the day, just that one day. Pick one that you want to have dinner prepared for, or lunches, whatever that day
Hmm.
consists of for you. But start with that one day, because if you can do that one day, then you can do another day. And knowing what's coming will also, definitely help you feel in control and less out of control. And one thing that I love to share that you can do with your children, you can do with your grandchildren, nieces or nephews, start at the beginning of the alphabet. There's 26 letters, and pick a fruit or vegetable with the letter A, start with A, that you have not tried together yet,
Oh.
and try that. And then go to the store together and pick that fruit or vegetable out so you can see what it looks like. And then find a recipe that has something to do with that fruit or vegetable and make it together. And as a family, then you get to decide if that's a thumbs up or a thumbs down. You're going to eat that again or you're not. And then next week, do the next letter, do the letter B. And if you do that every week, by the time the year is done, you'll actually gone through the alphabet twice in
Hmm.
experiencing new foods together as a family, and you get to have an open conversation about the food. And that's where it all starts, is really just experiencing, having open conversations, and bringing everybody together.
Oh, what a brilliant idea. And when you said that, I was thinking, oh, artichoke. I've never cooked artichokes, and
Oh,
maybe I
yes.
need to give that a
Yeah.
try. So if you've got a
Yes.
good artichoke recipe, share it, please.
Artichokes are I have tried it before. I am not an expert with artichokes. And it's funny because now that you say that, I'm like, I should go back and revisit that again and try again, because I've tried it before. I can order it in a restaurant, but
Right.
making it is different. But not to say, right now, I can't do it again and
Hmm.
try it again and do it differently. And that's
Yeah.
the fun of this too, is you get to try. You get to
Mm.
try. You're not failing, you're learning. And
Yeah.
that's the most important thing. Yeah.
And one of the things you mentioned there was how it brings you together as an opportunity.
Hmm.
And you talked about when you were a child that food was used really as a way to bring you together, but then not communicate verbally with one
Hmm.
another. And that was quite interesting. I haven't thought about that before. And I guess in lots of families, that was probably the same, like many families have their meals on a tray in front of the TV and watch the
In front
TV
of
and
the
don't
TV.
speak. But food is such an opportunity to bring conversation and interaction, and that's so important for our health and well-being,
Yeah.
as well as educating our children and teaching them what we want and so on. So yeah, I just think there's so much in what you said there that opens up the possibility of what food can do for you and your personal health, but
Hmm.
also I think for many of us, maybe more importantly, our children and their health in future.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've loved this conversation. Really enjoyed it because it's so aligned to my values and my experience as well. And I just think it's great to hear your passion and share that. So if someone would like to find out more and check out how you work and some
Yep.
delicious recipes, which I'm sure you share, where's the best place
Yep.
for them to find you, Kristy?
So the best place to find me is probably on Instagram. I'm Clean Eating with Kristy, and it's clean with a K and Kristy with a K, all one word. And my website is the same as well, cleaneatingwithkristy.com. I keep it pretty simple. And I would love for you to reach out to me, ask me any questions. But I do share lots of things on Instagram that are just everyday things that happen in the kitchen at home and recipes. And I'm here for all the food questions. That's my jam.
Oh, brilliant. Because, yeah, people are always asking me for different recipes. I don't share
Yep.
lots of recipes. I give insights into what I eat, but I think that's a
Yep.
brilliant place for someone to go. And I will pop the links into the show notes so that you
Great.
can take a look and see if
Yeah.
anything takes your fancy. So thanks again so much for sharing your passion and all of your insights and experience. I really appreciate chatting with you today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. This was really fun. I enjoyed it.